record button. But I've been having people on podcasts more around campus. Like I just had a pastor from the church that I go to, and I had to talk with him. And I wanted to get you on because I was just really interested about your story about being a missionary, going on the mission trip, and then also writing a book because that's something I want to do. So kind of just learning from you, seeing how your life story went, what you have learned from it. But that's why I brought you on. But I have a whole like little introduction thing that I want to do first. So I'll do that, but we'll see. You grew up in, I'm gonna cut this part out, but you grew up in, you were born in New York City and then raised in East Africa and Morocco?
You
No?
got an amazing memory.
Yeah?
Yeah. So East Africa was Kenya and Ethiopia.
Can you?
Right. So born in New York City, which is my mom's hometown,
Gotcha.
then raised in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Morocco. You got
Perfect.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to just get the little gist down. Like this is my first one, so apologies for all this, but
Oh, cool.
let's get started. But all right. So if you've if you've ever felt held back because you didn't feel ready or you felt scared, today's guest is going to speak directly to you. My guest is Rayola Osanya, born in New York City, raised across East Africa and Morocco, who became a missionary in the late 1980s and planted churches in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. He writes about that journey in his book, Go in the Strength You Have, about how all of us have the capacity to make a difference, but our focus on our weaknesses and feelings of inadequacy rob us of the confidence to actually act on the things that we want. So, Rayola, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's great
Of
to be here.
course. Of course. And for those that don't know, Rayola and I, we met, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago when you came down for the alumni game.
Right. That was it. The alumni soccer game. Yep.
That was amazing. And you were actually on the field playing a bit too. So that was dope.
I did. I was up against some young stallions.
It was good. And then afterwards, I kind of took him on a little tour of Frosh Quad. Well, basically one of the quads that he stayed in a while ago. So bringing down memory lane, but that was amazing.
Yep.
Yeah,
And thanks for that visit. It was special.
of course,
Yeah.
of
So it was my
course,
wife's first time at Williams. For me, it's only my second visit back. So thanks.
of course.
Yeah.
But first, the first thing as we jump in, but the people don't really know you. So, Rayola, who were you before all of these things, the mission trips, building the churches, before writing the book? Who were you just as a person?
Right. As a person, I was Rice. So Rice is a name I picked up in elementary school. So some people call me Rayola, some call me Rice. A lot of people call me both. And so that's who I was, born in New York City, my mom's hometown, and then my dad's from Kenya. So that's kind of how we ended up living in different places. My parents met in New York City when my dad was a student,
Got it.
but then he himself was back and forth. At the time I was born, he wasn't a student anymore. He was working for the Kenya government at the Kenya Permanent Mission to the United Nations.
Okay.
And so I was a young man, totally in love with soccer and hoping to maybe make a difference in one way or another in life. And I got my siblings. I have a twin brother, and
Yeah.
then 6 years older than us is another pair of twins. And so there I was, one of two pairs of twins, just
This
doing
is
my thing.
amazing. This is amazing. So you mentioned you were just trying to like make a difference in life. Could you talk a little bit about that? What was the difference you were trying to make?
So you're saying before Williams and all that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So before that, it was I wouldn't necessarily say I was making a difference, but that was in my mind.
Okay.
So growing up, I'm not sure where this started, but a seed was planted, and I just felt like I want to make a difference. I hadn't defined that,
Hmm.
but that was something that was in my mind in like elementary school, and as the years rolled by.
So you just felt like there was just something within you that just wanted to like do something different. That's outstanding. Wow. I kind of wish I had that.
Yeah, well, I think you have that from the little that we've talked. I think you have buckets of it. But I think if I think back, because different people, because I thought about people like MLK, and then also because I was in Kenya at that point when I was doing elementary school,
Hmm.
and there were some pretty powerful figures in Kenya as well. And somehow I was really attracted to those people, um, and all the people I had in mind. Lost their lives for their causes. MLK, of course,
Hmm.
some of the figures in Kenya that I was thinking of. But somehow that was really powerful to me. People who stood up and spoke and had a conviction and made a difference. And that I found that very attractive.
That is amazing. So did you, because I don't know if I want to get into the mission trip right away, but is that kind of why you went on the missions trip after your first year?
Right. So there's a distinct connection. So yeah. So like you're saying, uh, I that happened after my freshman year at Williams. But what happened was the summer just before I showed up for freshman year.
Yeah.
So I was in Morocco at that point.
Okay.
And so I did high school in Morocco. And then, there was like, the summer, kind of just waiting until I, hop on the plane, head from Morocco to back to the States.
Yeah.
And and I wasn't like going to church at that point. I believe in the Bible, but I wasn't actively going to church. And then there's a youth pastor who came into town, and I don't even remember how we got to know about him or his presence. But he came into town, and he was connected with a local church there. It was called the
Hmm.
American Church.
Okay.
And he just, so he gathered a group of us, and we just had an amazing time. Like we
Yeah.
were singing songs in an innovative and fun way. And then one thing, and maybe the thing that had the biggest impact on me, was he said that he had been, a Division I football player in college,
Mm.
and that he put that aside in order just to prioritize his faith and just sharing Christ. And I was like, because at that point my whole desire was to be a professional soccer player. That was it.
Yeah.
That's what I was gunning for. And so that had a huge impact on my life. First of all, he was fun, and the
Hmm.
way that he expressed his faith was really enjoyable. And
Okay.
then he had put aside a lifelong dream of being, an NFL player, being incredible even in college at Division I level. So that's then just a few weeks before I get to Williams. Then I'm at Williams, freshman year and everything, on the varsity team, which was a wonderful time for me. And then so what happened was, so in the summer, I was back in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
And that's when I was reached out to by some very impressive Christians, and they really helped me understand the Bible. And that's when now, I was reflecting on it, and then I thought to myself, I remembered that when I was younger, I had always wanted to make a difference.
Mm.
And then something struck me. I said, "This is it." I said, "This is it." I can make a huge difference with my faith in the same way that they were making a difference in my life by helping me understand myself better, helping me understand the Bible, helping me in my relationship with God. And so that's when, for me, that's when it all came together. And I
Okay.
said, this is it. And so at that point, the church was in New York City, and they were planning to send a mission team to Kenya. And to be honest, initially I was reluctant
Oh,
because I had left. I'd come back to the States. I'd left
okay.
Africa. And I'd come back to the States, and I just didn't have a plan to go back to Africa.
Yeah.
I just wasn't my plan. Uh, but then as I thought about it, and so I was asked onto the mission team when they found out that I had a Kenyan connection. Like, they're going to Kenya. My dad's from Kenya. I spent some years in Kenya. They're like,
You gotta go.
come on to the team. And I didn't want to, but it all came together in my mind. And I said, this is it. Well, it had clicked the year earlier when I came to faith. but now it took it to another level, and
Mm,
that's really what convinced me to then, I was 19 at the time, and so it's like, pack my bags. I'm not done with college. I barely started college, but
mm.
yeah, it struck me that was my dream, and I could make a difference in this way.
That is fascinating. I think the most fascinating thing about it is how you were reluctant to do it because you're like, well, I already left Kenya and it was like that wasn't my plan. Like I don't really want to go back, but you're like, this is my opportunity to do that thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid to make that difference, finally be that person. I just find that that's so fascinating. That is like, crazy. I guess so you went to Kenya, I guess what was like how did you feel when you got there? And like, what was the first thing that you actually did when you got there?
So I felt there was a lot of different feelings. I was excited. That was one thing. I was
Okay.
super excited, and it was great to have the support of the other members of the mission team. So my immediate family wasn't around. So
Okay.
my elder brother was, but yeah. So my elder sister, she was and my twin brother
Hmm.
were in the States. My dad was still in Morocco, and so the support system that I had was the other members of the mission team. And I'm not so sure my how much support my dad would have been anyway, because he didn't agree with what the decision I had made, and I don't blame him. Looking
Okay.
back, like, hey, listen, you went back to the States. You're at Williams College. You're like, what are you doing? Like heading back to Kenya when you're not done yet. So the support of the other
Hmm.
mission team members was pivotal. And then I'd keep running into old friends, people I'd gone to school with, and that was always a great connection. So the first thing I did, the first thing I don't know, the first thing that I can remember,
Hmm.
because it's a blur, like getting back and stuff like that. And I remember getting there later than I had planned, and I think some of the folks on the mission team were wondering, is he really going to show up? Um, but what I remember was just landing there
Yeah.
because we had been in New York, the whole team, and
Okay.
then other folks had gotten to Kenya ahead. So my thing at that point was to really connect with the others,
Okay.
figure out my living situation, and then but I was really excited. I was
Yeah.
thrilled.
Wait, I'm so curious because you said your dad would not, he was not happy at all. And so why did you still do it? I know you said because it's like your big opportunity to do it, but I feel like it's such a strong thing for your dad to just not approve and you still go.
Yeah, my so at the time, when I'm 19 and I'm just excited and full of dreams. That's for me. That's all that really mattered. But when
Okay.
I look back, I there's no way that my dad could have been in the same space that I was,
Yeah.
because he hadn't gone through.
Yeah.
He wasn't experiencing what I was experiencing. Um, and yeah, as a parent, like he sent me off to college, and I got into this amazing college.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, I'm supposed to stay there and get my degree and build my future, which all
Yeah.
makes sense. Now, in terms of my dad not being very happy with my move, I was aware, but it wasn't until many years later that I came to understand just how displeased he was. Because my dad, like, so he's not alive anymore, so that's why I keep
Okay.
saying was.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks. So he was an interesting guy because I feel like he was very supportive. So at the end of the day, he would be supportive, or he was supportive of decisions I made.
Hmm.
So that's what I remembered at the time, was like, all right, he helped out because the other thing that, being both Kenyan and American, I had both passports. And so, so I was in America as an American, then I'm going to Kenya. And he's like, well, you've got to go to Kenya as a Kenyan. I
Mm.
hadn't figured that out, but that makes sense. If you show up as a 19-year-old American, then what? You need what, a tourist visa or
Yeah.
student visa? So he helped me with that. So he, sorted that out. He paid for the plane ticket. So he did all that. And so I think because of that, I didn't realize just how much he was displeased by my decision. So what I found out years later was that he kind of um, he put pressure on my sister, and because my sister, she and I were together. We were in New York,
Yeah.
and my poor sister, it wasn't her decision; it was mine. But for some reason, I don't know it, I don't understand it, but he put the pressure on her, and so she told me about it, more recently. Um, so yeah, so in short, I was aware that my dad wasn't
Hmm.
amused by my decision, but he was pretty supportive, helping me get there as far as the logistics and the plane ticket. So
Oh,
he didn't stand in my way. And then, eventually, soon after I got back to Kenya, he got back to Kenya as well from Morocco. And
oh,
um and I ended up living with him again, and we had a great relationship. so as so he never tried to stop me from
yeah.
making the decision to go back to Kenya as a missionary, much as he didn't really like the decision.
Hmm. I'm so curious if somebody has like someone that's 19 or young has a passion like that, like it's the main thing that they want to do in life and say it kind of contradicts what their parents want for them. What would you tell somebody in that position based off of your experience? I know you can only talk from your experience, but what would you say to them?
Based on my experience, I'd say two things.
Okay.
Well, let's say three things. One I'd say is follow your dream.
Okay.
I just totally believe in that. And just follow your dream. It's your dream. It's your passion. It's what means a lot to you. Then go for it. Then the second thing I'd also say though is count the cost, in the sense of you know following your dream is at the expense of other things, whatever those might be. And
Hmm.
so in my case, following my dream to be a missionary was at the expense of remaining at Williams and remaining in the States. And there are certain, disadvantages to that. There's
Hmm.
a reason people come to the States for their education. There's a reason that decades earlier, my dad had left Kenya and come to the States for his, um, graduate education. And so that's another thing. Like, in other words, follow your dream, but don't, be so high on the adrenaline of your dream that you're not really thinking things through. So, count the cost.
Got it.
Going after what you desire is at the expense of maybe other things that you might otherwise have pursued, or other ways in which you might have planned for your future. And then the third thing I would say to the 19-year-old dreamer is do your best to explain yourself to your loved ones. So that could be your parents, if you have your parents and live with them. That could be your siblings, your wider family. But people who really care and have your genuine interest at heart,
Hmm.
they might not understand your dream or your passion. Don't just blow them off, which is what I feel I did. Do your best to explain yourself. And that's not to say they'll understand or they'll come on board immediately, but the more that you can get the understanding and the support of your loved ones and people who've been there, your whole life up to that point, the better.
Got it.
So, yeah. So
No.
those are the three things I'd say.
No, that really helps. Like that helps more than you would know. But so it kind of seems to me, but I want your answer first before I say anything. But do you regret the decision of going to Kenya for the mission trip and leaving Williams College at all?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I don't regret it. No,
That was
it
my
was.
my feeling on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Honestly, I look back. I think it was a brave decision. It was kind of a crazy decision. Uh, and at 19, that's what the decision I made. Would I have made the same decision? I don't know if under other circumstances. I don't know. But do I regret it? I don't. I don't. I'm glad that I took the step that I did, and that God even gave me the opportunity for that.
Yeah. I'm so curious. Do you write about all of this in your book? or
Yeah,
this is
it's all in there. It's all in there. Yes, it's yeah. So much of the book, the first section, I'm not sure if I could say the first half or whatever. A
yeah.
lot of it is that
Okay.
about um just going on the mission, being called as a teenager, answering the call as a teenager, and all that went with that. Because then I ended up in Nairobi. That's the capital of Kenya.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was sent to a city in Kenya. Still a student, still an undergrad student. I was sent and helped start a church there again as a missionary. Then to Ethiopia again. All this time, I'm still an undergrad student, and yeah, and there are a lot of just different challenges, cultural challenges, challenges with just getting set up. And again, not every government is very open, to the idea of folks are coming in here, they're planting a church.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then even just on the ground, like Ethiopia, maybe every country, but Ethiopia has, I would say, a unique culture,
Yeah.
compared to the rest of East Africa. Now, for me, I had been there as a child, so that's one of the countries I had lived in as a child for 3 years, and it was great to go back. But this time I was going on my own, not as an expatriate
Yeah.
child, in an expatriate family. And so, um, yeah, there was that. And then eventually ended up in Rwanda just after, not long after the genocide there.
Mm.
Um, so there were, yeah, there were a lot of lessons to learn. And I'm trying, forgive me, what was the question? I kind of got lost on getting excited about what I was saying.
No, you're so good. I think I asked something about I honestly kind of oh, I asked, did you write about the stuff with your
Yes.
father in the book? That's what it
Yes,
was.
you're right. Yeah, okay, you're right. You're right.
I
Exactly. That
was
was
just
what I was
messing.
answering. I was trying to say yes. So it's all in there. Now, the bit about my father, I do write about my father,
Yeah.
not so much, actually, not at all, as far as his displeasure with me going back to Kenya.
Yeah.
I do write about him. I write about him as my hero because
Mm.
to me, he's really heroic. I mean, he came from a village in Kenya. That's where he grew up, in a village in Kenya, and somehow in that village, with it's a rural village, no electricity, that kind of thing,
Wow.
and somehow he set himself on a dream and ended up being an outstanding student, and became an international civil servant. Was with the Organization of African Unity, which is the forerunner to the African Union.
Mm.
Yeah, so he became the Assistant Secretary General for Economics. He served the Kenya government at the United Nations, and so I'm like, how does a rural kid even dare to think that that's what he's going to become? So in the book, when I do write about my dad, I
Mm.
write about him as one of my heroes. But all the other missionary experiences are in there in the first portion of the book.
Oh, that is amazing. Seeing your dad as a hero and actually just the way you described it, going from the rural kid to working where he was able to, that is truly amazing. I've never heard of that before. That is amazing. Man.
Yeah,
But
I love him for it.
I'm curious about the building churches because I'm starting to get into my faith and like that seems like such an amazing thing. Like, was that the whole objective of the actual missions trip to build churches in different countries?
Yes, initially, yeah, when we went to Kenya, definitely yes, and then also in Ethiopia, and then by the time I ended up going to Rwanda, so when I
Yeah,
went to Rwanda, at that point I was married,
yeah,
so it was trying to remember how many years into our marriage. It was 4 years into our marriage.
gosh.
And so, because and for me that was now another dream. So at one point I was like, yeah, so I've done this, when I was single, as a, and helping plant churches and stuff. And So I want to get married, and I hope that when I get married, that my wife and I can do this. And
Uh,
the opportunity came, and so my wife and I were sent to Rwanda.
yeah.
And so for me, also, I'd studied French. So like when I started off at Williams, so in the end, I did a freshman year at Williams. So that's as long as I was at Williams. And so I was doing French in William at Williams. I'd started learning French in Kenya, continued in Morocco, and in Morocco, there's a lot more French,
Yeah.
Arabic, French, and Spanish in northern Morocco. So at Williams, I continued studying French in the university. So I eventually graduated in Nairobi. By the way, so that's just to close that circle. So when I went to Kenya, I then ended up at the University of Nairobi in Kenya, graduated.
Okay.
So I majored in sociology and French, and so now this was going to Rwanda was then an opportunity to use my French. So I'm like, my French wasn't for nothing because Rwanda had been colonized by the Belgians, and so I think France was also involved in Rwanda at some point after independence. So there was still a lot of French being used, and so for me, that was an opportunity to use my French and to use it to help in the mission.
Yeah.
So at that point, though, to answer your question, it was twofold. There was help to start a church, but then also get some benevolent activities going. So
Mm,
there's a nonprofit that was or still is linked to the church, and so we want to do both, or let me say, we were sent to do both. Start
yeah.
a church, but also get some very concrete, benevolent projects going to help the community.
Wow. This the missions trips sound amazing. Like as somebody, as I told you, like growing my faith and starting to read the Bible and everything, like it does sound like an amazing thing to be doing.
It was exciting, scary at times.
Why
Scary at
scary?
times. Well, because like going into a new culture,
Yeah.
a new country, a new culture, a new language setup is not easy. Now, maybe it's easier for some than for others. But for me, there was trepidation as
Okay.
well as the excitement. So, like I remember at one point in Ethiopia, because another thing we're doing, we're trying to get the church registered. So, like it's an official registered church, and
Hmm.
they're trying to meet some of the requirements. And it needed one of the requirements was you needed to have a an office, and it's got to have a telephone, and that might sound super basic here in the
Yeah.
States, but having a landline telephone back then, well, first of all,
Hmm.
mobile phones didn't exist. And I'm not saying I'm old. I'm just saying mobile phones didn't exist back then.
Okay, okay.
But then even getting a landline, phone hookup, that wasn't the easiest. So we got this place that had all that. And then, so by the time I got into Ethiopia, so there had been a mission team that had been sent. So I was taking over from whoever was previously there, and there were a few local people there as well. So we got this place. It had a landline phone, and everything was a nice building. But then the people in that neighborhood, for some reason, I think
Yeah.
I know the reason, they were very hostile. And
Mm,
I think the reason was because they understood that we were missionaries, and they were not pleased. There was a traditional setup in Ethiopia that a lot of people are connected to. Maximum respect to them for that.
yeah.
So there was some opposition. And then I remember there was one time, so we were trying to move because it didn't work. I mean, it's just such a hostile environment.
Yeah.
And, this guy comes in. Some things they happen and it's so fast, it's a blur. But a guy comes in and he's yelling and stuff. And then he like had this, I don't know, it was a stone or a rock, one or the other. And he just like threw it. So I was like with another gentleman.
Yeah.
So that gentleman is Ethiopian. He had previously been a refugee in Kenya. So we met
Mm,
each other in Kenya. Then he went back to Ethiopia for the mission. Then I went to Ethiopia. So we met up in Ethiopia. And this guy takes the rock and he throws it at that guy. And I don't know what he's saying, but I know he's angry. So that's just an example. So those are the kind of things when I say that it's scary at times. When we got to Rwanda, my wife and I, there had been very sadly and tragically a genocide in
mm,
Rwanda, a civil war that overlapped with a genocide, and that whole it all ended in 19. Let me get my dates right. 94, if I
Mm,
have it right. In fact, 4th of July, which in the States is, celebrated as Independence Day, 4th of July is also an important day in Rwanda. So they celebrate
mm.
that as Liberation Day. So
Okay.
when the Civil War came to an end, but there was a genocide. It was horrific. Uh, the statistics say 800,000 people were killed, slaughtered
Wow.
in 100 days. It was horrific. And so when we got there, you could still see the marks of the genocide, the marks of the war on the people and on the buildings. So
Mm,
like I remember Parliament buildings, because that had been the last front in the war. That was like the last stand, of the forces that were coming in against the forces that were trying to hold out. And so you see, how the building just got shelled and hit with missiles and bullets and everything. And so I guess for some reason they chose not to repair that immediately. It's
mm,
kind of like for people to remember. And also you'd see people with living with pretty serious injuries that took place, during the war, during the genocide. And then also as we got to know people and hear people's stories, it was yeah, it was quite scary at times. And then I remember one time I was arrested because at that point they didn't have police; they just had the army. So the army was doing
uh,
everything, and so everywhere you look, there's these like soldiers in their camouflage. They've got their AK-47 guns, and
yeah.
now Rwanda, even then, okay, having come from war, it was pretty peaceful in the capital city.
Yeah.